Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this special episode of Transformed You. Mark and Melissa De Jesus here, ready to address your questions.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're going to get into the specific area of obsessive-compulsive questions. And we've had a number of emails and notes come in, and we're going to hit the ground running, and we pray that our feedback will be helpful for your life and journey. But it pierces your heart to read.
I know it does.
What people are going through.
It is true. Sorry, my mic was down a little.
Yeah, I think that there's a few things I want to share up front that I think are really important as we address these questions. Number one, I get a lot of emails specifically in this area. I spent about 3 months dedicating time to really investing in this subject. I developed a whole lot of content and material. In fact, I want to bring that to your attention. If you haven't had the ability or time or just didn't know, I have a page dedicated to the subject of OCD help. It's markdejesus.com/OCD help. I highly recommend this. And anytime I address OCD issues, I will take that content and link it on that page. So it's going to be a growing resource. And we'll see what we do with it in the future, but it's a collection of all the areas. I really, really want to encourage you that if you find yourself struggling in this area, you need to dig and do some deep dive in a good way in your life. Not the deep dive that we tend to do in our compulsions. But our discussion today is not meant to replace any professional help you're getting. We're your brother and sister. Yeah. And we have had a lot of experience in our own lives, and we found that the church has become really obsessive compulsive in a lot of ways. And we found that there's some areas that we do to add to the problem. So there's a couple things I want to share first and foremost is right off the top. Like, my heart aches in the stories I read, the things that come in and what people are facing and battling. And so we're praying that we can be a nurturing and compassionate, but yet truthful help to your journey, because it does take some compassionate understanding, but also some strong decisions of realizing the battle and the choices that you have to begin to move forward. I know for my life, I've needed compassionate nurture, but also like, all right, I got to take a stance, and I got to start really on a daily basis recognizing how to face this battle.
Yeah, and I think that people need to understand, too, that they're not alone, because most of the emails that you read, whether it's about OCD or other things, people think their story is unique. And it's not to say you're not unique, because you are, but you need to understand there are so many other people in your same battle.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's a hang up in the OCD journey, is you think yours is...
Mine's the worst. If you just hear mine, right.
Right. So what happens is it doesn't allow us to hear the teaching that's needed.
It doesn't. Right.
So you have a scrupulosity, religious kind of thing. And go, okay, here's some of the things you need to do. Yeah, but what about this thing if I know that I'm really sick? And if you find yourself responding to helpful input by going, yeah, but what about?
Yeah.
Then that is the very nature of what OCD does. It's like the game whack-a-mole. You're constantly trying to hit. And I encourage people to just unplug the machine. Now, that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But, we think like, and I thought that at times, like no, this battle is really weird and strange and no one else has this. And then as I began to work on it, encourage others, like, wow, quite frankly, a lot of people deal with some form of this. Maybe it's not as intense. Maybe they wouldn't be diagnosed, but they deal with some form of it.
I think most people have, in some way, shape, or form, an OCD tendency. They do.
My encouragement to those of you who are wanting deeper help is a couple things. You have to realize the problem is not the problem. Right. And I hesitate in addressing certain subjects when people want to help on a subject. When they have OCD tendencies, me addressing the subject that they're obsessing about isn't going to help. Does that make sense?
Yes, and people need to hear that again.
So let's say you have you're not saved and you're spinning about going to hell. Mm-hmm. So often the natural tendency is, how do I know I'm not going to hell.com? Mm-hmm. Right?
Correct.
If that's a website, forgive me. But like, how do I know if I'm saved Facebook group? And if you notice that no one in the history of OCD has said, you know what? I struggle with OCD. And then I went and researched. I
saw that answer.
That subject
right.
and it solved it.
Right.
Nope. Another one comes up. Another one comes up. Another one comes up. So you have to realize that when we address a subject, someone will ask me, well, how do you know if you're really saved? It's like, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Because usually how do I know I'm saved? There's some form of obsession compulsion, because the new covenant doesn't go, hey, let me make sure you check off all your
boxes, right?
Your boxes,
right.
To make sure. And people with OCD can't read the Bible relationally because they're looking for the rules.
Correct.
And that's a big trap. Big trap in the OCD journey is that you're looking for the rule. So I want to tell you this very, very upfrontly, and please hear this. 100% of every email, I'm not talking 90%, I'm not talking about 95, 100% of every email, every conversation, every chat, every coaching session with someone who has OCD has the 7 distortions that I talk about. They cycle right through them. That's why it's so important. That's where your journey is. And in fact, for those of you watching, I put them up on a slide. And this is every question, 100%, every question, every problem. They cycle 1 through 7 and back again, 1 through 7 and back again. And where we get, sometimes there's some hitches, is they don't realize they're perfectionists.
No.
And that becomes challenging because it's not the best label.
Right. You and I have had many spinning arguments about this because I had a really hard time recognizing that I struggled with perfectionism because I thought having perfectionism meant that I did things awesome and that I felt good about the fact that I did things awesome and there was a perfection. I had such a convoluted lens.
Right.
So I was like, no, I do. You and I mean, we went over this a lot.
We've had many disagreements on it.
Many.
Yeah. And because you saw perfectionism.
I don't have perfectionism.
Right. You saw it as an achievers thing only. And you're like,
only an achievers thing.
You're like, I'm not a high achiever. And constantly people say to me, I'm not a perfectionist, but I do like things just right.
Right.
That's what it is. Black and white thinking.
Right.
The very nature, if you have OCD, you have some form of perfectionism in your thinking. And if you're a Christian, it's going to be law-based.
Yeah.
You're looking for the rules. So in almost all the questions that come in here, they're asking for a rule.
100%.
So I have
Right.
this, so give me the rule.
Give me the rule so I can make it black and white in my brain, right?
You're a perfectionist.
Right.
So right off the jump, number one derails you because you have this harsh pressure of excessive standard on you that doesn't allow you to be able to process things in a healthy way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah, give me the rule, give me the rule, give me the rule, give me the rule. So perfectionism. Then you struggle with uncertainty. The uncertainty kind of goes into the what if. Like, what if this? What if I'm not saved? What if I need to confess this? What if I need to? What if this thought was me? What if I do this thought? The uncertainty gets magnified. I talk about that. Then number 3 is the distorted meaning of the thoughts,
Right.
which this is huge because that's your interpretation. And so,
Yeah.
let me say this. I've said this to many people I've coached is the overwhelming majority, I'm saying the 90 percentile of people surveyed have said they have intrusive thoughts, I should say. Like 95% of people say, yes, I've had intrusive thoughts, crazy thoughts, thoughts that really come in and take over or want to take over. Very strange, out of the blue. 95%, like somewhere in that. So look around, 10 people in the room, 9 of them have struggled, and the 10th person is probably in denial.
Right.
Or they self-medicate.
Do you remember when we years ago we were kind of just starting to understand OCD more and helping people, and we had somebody come to us about some things they were struggling with and they were having a hard time, and we were like, okay, this kind of sounds like when you're in the grocery store and you look at somebody and all of a sudden you have a thought, grab their butt.
Right.
Punch them, kick them, do something, right? And then you cycle through the police coming. What did I do? Did I do it? Horrible person. And the person was like, oh my gosh, you think that too?
Right.
And they were you could see their whole body posture just, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy.
Right.
I do that too. We're like, yeah. And we all actually had a good laugh about it.
Right.
And it helped to take the power away from that thought in the person. Now, I'm not saying we cured them
Correct.
and all that, but that's what I'm saying. You're not alone. We all have crazy and intrusive thoughts that happen.
Yeah. And that key comes down to how you interpret it. And if you have that perfectionistic tendency, there's no room for any thought to come into your thinking that violates that intense standard. So what is that going to do? It makes it worse.
Right.
You're going to have more of them because you go, don't think. I'm going to make sure I don't think today. Make sure I don't think because I'm holy and God wants us holy because I'm saved and I don't want any that is a setup for destruction.
Yeah.
Because then you're fearful of it.
Right.
So the interpretation's huge. And this is where I walk through the 7 distortions and teach them through. I do deep dives on them. That's your battle. So whatever your question is about OCD, your battle is the 7 distortions. The problem is not the problem.
Right.
Now,
So good.
Now, coming off of your OCD patterns, I tell this to everyone I coach. Some people are getting it. It's helping them. Is I say when you starve your compulsion and start moving in a new direction, it is the equivalent of a drug addict coming off of a drug.
Right.
So then what happens is people write to me, Mark, it's so hard. And like, how many days has it been? It's been 3 days, but it's been like, oh, you think this is supposed to be solved in overnight. Like, contact me again in 3 months, 6 months of consistently just starving it and learning what love is and moving into new patterns.
Right.
Then we'll kind of, they get into that intensity. But these 7 distortions are so important. So then what happens is your interpretation's off. You overestimate the threat. No, Mark, I need to solve this. Am I going to hell? No, Mark, I need to solve this. I have this thought. I could be capable of doing it. So this is where getting advice from people is tricky. Because you go to somebody and say, I have this thought that I'm gonna punch someone in the face. And then the person engages you in that and goes, well, have you had thoughts of punching people? Are you a face puncher? Maybe you have face punching in your family. Right? So now it cycles this whole diagnostic. It's like, no, it sounds like an intrusive thought. When you understand OCD, it helps people to not be so afraid of their thoughts. And Christians can be notorious of A, being afraid of our thoughts, because they're like, whoa, that's not a good thought. And B, we have a fear of evil. We have a fear of sin.
Right. We don't.
We're afraid of sin. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness.
Right.
Oh, So there are many times where I will address your question by more getting to the root system of OCD versus chasing your question, because chasing the question is not helpful.
No. And a black and white answer is not going to solve it. That's why the heart of what we do is always redirected back to relationship, working things out in relationship, and love.
Yep.
What's the foundation of love? Because you can't tackle any of this without those things.
What you lack in
Right.
OCD struggles is you lack nurture. You have a massive lack of nurture. You don't know how to receive nurture. You don't know how to nurture yourself. So that's the journey. It can uncover mother wounds. It can uncover self-hatred issues. You beat yourself up. You don't know how to engage a loving narrative. There's a lack of understanding unconditional love. So you're always trying to fix that subject to feel better
and feel peace and feel okay, right?
Every time you do that, it's a trap, because it sets you up for conditional love. Let me fix this. God likes me now. I'm better. And it's a trap. Like, no, he loves you right now. And so the discomfort of learning that. And then also, what is grace? Because OCD sufferers become law-based. Right. And the law is a trap. The law is a trap.
It's true.
Yeah, but Mark, it's sin, right? And there's the fear of sin. And it becomes the magnifying subject, right? Kind of distorts. So I think that I want to encourage all those of you who've been helped and benefited in any way, because it cycles down to inflated responsibility. I've got to do something about this. I got to control this. And then 7 is you don't actually know what your emotions are about. You think your emotion is about a sexual thought. You think your emotion is about a salvation issue, or whatever. And really, it's a deeper issue about how you receive nurture, how you receive love, and never being equipped to process your emotions in a healthy way. Right. I find that a lot of times the diagnostic of somebody who's like trying to discern with OCD, it's usually way off, and that does need some help in knowing like what's really the issue.
Absolutely.
And I think that was helpful. You and I, in our relationship, we worked hard in navigating what's the real issue. And I would come and talk to you about a problem. It's like, it's over here, and you would kind of direct over here.
Right.
And I do the same for you.
Right.
But sometimes it's hard to do it for yourself, because you get locked in whatever it is, the conflict, the person, the thing, whatever's creating that tension in you, you focus on that. And I think you and I have tried to really work hard at like, no, I think this is what's going on.
Yeah. Well, from, early on, we were digging deep into those things, and I'm really grateful for it, which is why I encourage people to find someone really safe that can love you through these things. Now, you don't want to be calling them every hour going, hey, I'm having another thought. We're not encouraging that, but there is a place of finding safe relationship and processing a lot of things. And
some of the questions go into that. So
if you want to jump right in, we
go
can.
Ahead.
Okay, awesome.
Start us off.
All right. So this question is about, I really love this question, actually. This is about helping their sister with scrupulosity. My sister is self-condemning and scrupulous in her behavior. How can we best support her in opening herself up to truth? She is still so closed. We dearly want to be able to help her. We are constantly watching your YouTube material. Yay, have your books, and there is so much truth to be learned. Thank you so much. The hardest thing is when someone you love is so fixated on that one thing, and we go constantly on that loop to the point of inverted pride. So how to help your sister?
Yeah, dealing with family is always challenging anyways. But I think that...
First, I want to just say that this is awesome for a sister to reach out and say that you are yourself getting material and books and truth. We don't hear that a lot, so it's just I commend you as a family to be trying to figure this out with her.
Meaning you don't hear it a lot in the sense of like where people are taking it then trickling into
the family. So,
yeah. More and more people are rising up to that. So way to go. I think it's always a challenge to, when you're awakened to something, the next instinct you move into is, I want to share it with other people. And you see things, you start to have light bulbs go off. It makes sense in certain relationship interactions. It makes sense in like people you've talked to and stuff. So you want them to get it. The thing is that people get it when they're ready. And I'm in the constant daily routine of taking in people that just aren't ready. Like you can just tell they're not ready. And for OCD, it's very,
they just want the rule.
It's very similar. Dealing with someone with OCD is very similar to someone who is an addict. It's very, very similar. They can become very defensive. They have certain value systems. They often haven't come to the end of themselves yet. It's like they're spinning on that subject. And the scrupulosity one is very easy to use as a front, because it sounds like you really are going after the goodness, the holiness of God, right?
Right.
And it's like, now you're stuck in the law. You're stuck in your rut. You're stuck in that thing. And I find, until you come to the end of yourself, that's you're not going to get the help you need, because then when you come to the end of yourself, meaning this isn't working. This pathway isn't serving my life.
Right. And when it comes to that topic, it's almost like it can't be allowed to even be discussed unless love is in the picture. When those discussions are had and the person is spinning, hold on a second. What does love say about this? How can we put love into the context of this conversation?
Right.
It's hard to do that.
Yep. And I think for this situation, for many, there does come a point where tough love is important, where it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing the spinning on that subject anymore.
Right.
Like, we're not going to feed that, because if we feed it, we become like codependent with like, it's like an addict. We're not going to enable
100%.
your addiction, because I've taught on this, that OCD often has addiction in the root system. It is there. Right. They process thinking patterns like an addict. That's my very strong conviction. And when you work with them, they act like drug addicts.
Yeah.
The drug addict is the thought. Mm-hmm. And many times when they're in their compulsion, it's like they're in their fix. Mm-hmm. And you're like, no, you can't do that. So then they have withdrawal symptoms.
100%.
You know? Mm-hmm. And so if a heroin addict goes in and they have to go through detox, they're not on day 2 going, why do I feel like I'm dying?
Right.
Everyone around goes, yeah, that's what it's like. And I tell people with OCD patterns, you're going to feel like that at times.
Right. Well, I remember even in, it was weird because you and I had OCD, but in very different things, obviously. You know, growing up, mine was a lot of touching, repetitive things to make myself feel better. And I remember trying to stop those things and feeling like I wanted to come out of my skin. Like my skin was crawling as if I was coming off of a drug so badly.
Right.
You know, so it's a great comparison because it definitely.
Yeah. And I think the approach is loving kindness. Like, hey, listen, you're not crazy. You're battling something that it's a battle and it needs some careful attention. You're loved. You're not shamed for having it. But there does come a point where relationally, I do find kind of have to draw the line. Even people I work with one-on-one, it's like, no, I'm not feeding that anymore. I can't keep feeding that, because they will then at times use me for reassurance. They want the reassurance, and I become the new reassurance target. So they keep expressing, and there's this cry, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? What's the right way? Your perfectionism needs healing.
Yeah. I would say too, as far as helping your sister, it's been very beneficial for me. I am lucky to have a sister that I can talk to pretty much about anything. And her and I have been able to go through and walk through what happened to us as children. We have been digging deep into it. And I think that it's so awesome that you're there to walk with your sister, because that can be a really good place of going, okay, when did a lot of this OCD start? When did what was going on in our family? That it's a really great position to be in to help process a family member out. I know my sister and I have gained a lot from being able to do that of, hey, wait a second. Remember when this was happening? What was going on in our home? What could have been happening that maybe these things have sprung out of that?
The thing that is beneficial about that is there becomes openness, right? What sticks out to me in this question is she is so closed.
Right.
And I think that's where we have to release people. We have to release them in our hearts.
True. Yeah.
You have to release them in our hearts, because it's like, we're not the fixers. We're not. And I tell this to people, even when they contact me and I do one-on-ones with them. Like, I'm not here to fix you. We have this fixing mentality, right? That's not what love invites us in. Like, hurry up and fix us. It goes counterintuitive to what God's actually wanting to do. He's wanting you to understand what it means to be loved, what he did for you, how he sees you. And so we all have to come to that place of, how much do they want it versus how much I want it for them?
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the dynamic in all relationships, whether it's family or people. I think the next one's going to get into a parenting situation, a parent with an adult child that has intense OCD. When you feel your want to for them exceeds their want to for themselves, that's a signal. I got to let it go.
Step back. Yeah.
Sometimes the most powerful prayer you can pray for someone that you want to be a help to is, God, I release them to you.
Yep.
I let this go, because then it becomes a burden. And you respond to everything with, how do I need to fix? How do I need to deal with this? And it's like, no, this isn't on you to fix anyone.
Right. Ain't that the truth, y'all?
Work on yourself and bring that. And I've had a long journey of that, because I've been in the specific arena of doing a lot of work helping people. And I've had a real problem with that, like, seeing the potential and then like trying to convince them and trying to convince them and trying to convince. And I've had a real journey in like learning to like let that go,
right?
Not take that on,
right? Not be the rescuer.
Not listen to guilt, because guilt will train us,
right?
Oh, you should do more. You should be more. Maybe you should call. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you should say this. And with OCD, it's like you're playing these like jujitsu games of like, over here, this. What about this? What about this?
Right.
And sometimes,
because it never satisfies.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
So it's like in those moments where it's like another thought. It's like you're not listening.
Yeah,
you're not listening. Yeah, but what about the unpardonable sin? Okay, you're not listening.
Right.
Right.
Okay, let's get into the next question, because it's similar, but as a parent, you probably have a lot of the same advice. My adult son has severe scrupulosity. Because of that, he thinks he rejected God, accepted Satan, and therefore God left him and he's going to hell. He thinks he allowed Satan to possess him and that he is evil. He lives in extreme anxiety and panic, thinking he lost Jesus, his best friend. He doesn't accept that he is OCD, even though he has been diagnosed with it by several professionals, because he thinks that it's all his own spiritual doom. He's debilitated, self-medicated with alcohol, making mental health worse. How can I help him get help when he doesn't accept the reality of his illness?
So the last sentence right there summarizes it. How can I help him get help? He doesn't accept the reality. This is challenging because it's your child. The child's an adult now. He's in his 30s. And it's another layer of like, God, I give you the pain of this, but I give my son to you. He's yours, right? Us parents, we're always in a journey from zero to whenever, constantly learning to let go, to release them to God.
Staying in a place of love, but not codependency. Isn't that the place of a parent?
100%. Yeah, because then your issues get tied in. You know, your broken issues.
Right.
Like, we're all healing through our stuff, and that gets mixed into what you see.
I don't want them to feel what I felt.
Right. So now to break this situation down, my approach in anything regarding your spiritual life, I refuse to come into agreement with any reality someone has that leaves them trapped and hopeless. That is a clear sign you are listening to antichrist demonic thoughts. Now, I'm not saying, like you've got all these demons on you that you got. What I'm saying is the source of those thoughts is not of God. And so this is rooted in a lot of self-hate. It's like, right. I am doomed. It's an ultimate, I am unlovable and nothing can fix me. I'm doomed for hell. So then you go to doomed for hell, dot whatever, and try to search it, and then it just feeds it. And so my exhortation for mental health in this context is this. You and I have been given something by God that he will not force on you. And listen to this. This is for everyone, not just OCD. Is your ability to choose the reality that you stand by. God will not. So we're always praying, God, take this away. God does it. If he answers that prayer, you're no longer a human.
Right.
He has to now take your mind, think for you, and you're now a puppet. You're now a robot. He has to come into your world. He will not do that. Now, the enemy tries to do that. Tries to be a puppet master to you. Force your thoughts, force his ways, right? God gives you the ability every day to choose your reality. And mental health is improved or eroded by the reality that I choose. Now, I can feel like, oh my, I have all these thoughts that like this or wherever direction. But I choose truth that says this. Right. Now, what trips people up is I don't feel it. I don't feel it because they don't understand feelings. Feelings has gotten a bad rap, et cetera, et cetera. When you live in a certain pathway and then choose to move in another direction, it takes a while for your faculties to come into alignment with that. It takes a while. And we don't understand that. So we want to make a change and we go, well, I don't feel that. So then we go back and we struggle. And so again, the first question you have to ask yourself, are my thoughts enhancing faith, hope, and love?
Right.
Are they enhancing power, love, and sound mind? Those are gauges you can utilize. Are they setting me free? The truth sets you free. Lies keep you bound. Yeah, but I think I may have committed right? Where does it spin you? Where does it spin you, right? And then 2 is what's the reality you're going to choose, because OCD will leave us into an altered reality.
Correct.
Just like someone with paranoid schizophrenia can be enmeshed in an altered reality.
Right. And all of that removes you from relationship. Whether it's focusing on, I got to go touch the door handle. All of it removes you from the reality that you're in and removes you from relationships.
Yeah.
That's what it does.
And
because you're inside your head spinning, going, I got to feel better, I got to feel better, I got to feel better, I got to feel better. I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
I've been there.
Right. And relationships is where your healing is. And you could have any kind of battle of something that's coming against you. But the thing that's empowered me, and there have been many times in seasons where I'm like, wow, this could really lead me to delusion. But it feels so real and so strong. But I took back my ability to choose. That like in this moment, I can choose life. I can choose the freedom path. I can choose the reality that says I am loved. God is with me. I can choose that. So that empowered me in a lot of areas, because then you realize love is a choice. You realize God has empowered us to choose this day. He will give you the Bible. He'll give you people in your life. But at the end of the day, we have to choose. And what's being grieved here is that the council is saying, hey, these are OCD types of issues. And so, but he's convinced he's doomed. And it's like, well, that's what you want to believe, that you're doomed? No one can force you to believe otherwise.
Right. That's the tough part. I
get to choose my reality. Right. Now, the benefit of relationships is it can heal, it can love you. Obviously, that's the place where we're all broken to some degree. But it's also a good reality check. Like I jokingly say, like you're a great sense, like I'll say something and you can kind of go, that ain't right. Right? And especially for me, because many times I process both internally and externally. I do a little bit of both. But in these troublesome areas, it's really helpful to let it out, put it out there, and receive the input of people that know me and know my battle. Like, okay, yeah, I need to shift this. That's something I can't do for anyone, nor can you do for your son, nor the previous lady can do for her sister.
Right.
You can't, and this is the pain that even God himself feels when we don't choose the beauty of what he's laid out.
Right, because what if I don't respond well in that moment? You still have to choose how you're going to go, okay, I got to work this out. Because what if I don't have great advice for you in that moment and say, or,
I still have to choose.
You still have to choose.
Right. Because you're not like, I'm not the perfect.
I don't have the answers for everything, okay? No.
Neither do I.
Oh, goodness.
The older I get, the more God heals me and grows me, the less I feel I.
Right. Hey, Nick Walker.
I have answers.
You're amazing. Oh, thank you, Nick.
So, thank you very much for all those that support this. And
thanks, guys.
Really so somebody, let me address this. I just glanced over and see the question here. Can more OCD topics come in when you're afraid of thoughts? I feel that's the issue I've run into. Yeah, I think for you, what I would encourage is the practice of not being afraid of your thoughts, meaning that you create a routine, a healthy routine where you calmingly let those thoughts pass through. And it's like I have a video I did on how to not be afraid of your thoughts. Check that out. I found that to be very empowering. It's like, no, this thought doesn't have to mean anything. Nope, this thought doesn't have to threaten me. And that's part of the healing process in our journey. As we rise up, we're no longer afraid of the bully, right? Because we're so afraid of our thoughts. And I will admit the Bible is very militant in how it talks about thoughts, right? Weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God to the pulling down our stronghold. Put on the whole armor of God. You may be able to stand in the evil day, right? Okay. This is all predicated, though, on the foundation of being loved as a son or daughter.
Love.
There's a big difference between going out and fighting the battle as a son and going out and fighting the battle as an unloved slave. Big difference.
So good.
Right? In the first scenario, the son or daughter who knows they're loved by their father, they go out and they go, we're winning this. In fact, it's already won. We're taking this, right? So there's confidence.
That's it right there. That is actually it.
There's confidence there, right? Whereas in the orphan slave mindset, it's like, oh, this thought, oh my goodness, right? So
it's 100% where the battle is right there.
Right. I used to tell this.
That's it. We're done.
Q&A's over.
It's over. We gave you the answer.
I used to tell this story. It was like, I think it was a story I heard of Tony Robbins helping Andre Agassi. Right?
Yes.
In this story. And Andre Agassi's career was slumping and stuff like that. Well, he later says that I think he kind of hated tennis. In some ways, but his career was slumping. So he calls in Tony Robbins, we're going to help. And it's a very interesting story because what he did was he played a video of Andre when he was at his best. Okay. And, he does the thing with the hair. Remember he had that hair?
Oh, I remember. He was the thing back in the day, okay? And we saw he was really receding, and he cut it, and it was all
right. And he wore the headband because he was losing his hair, and he was insecure.
He was cool with the long hair.
There's a whole other story that he came out
wasn't cool
with.
Anymore, right?
Anyway,
sorry, we sidetracked.
So he throws the ball up in the air. And he's about to go to the serve, and Tony Robbins freezes the tape. This is the best I remember the story. Freezes the tape, and goes stop. He goes, "What was your mindset right there?" And the feedback he gave, again, giving the story the best I remember. What were you thinking in that moment? What I was thinking was, why did this guy even bother to show up playing me?
Right. His confidence.
Okay.
Right?
Just like So now take a different mindset. Oh my goodness, I hope I don't fail. What's going to happen to the serve?
You're not going to have your power behind it.
Right.
Right.
So in sonship, you're like, I'm loved. Like, oh, crazy thought. Look at the crazy thought. Because when you're loved, you also know who you are. Right. So when you know who you are, the quote unquote crazy thoughts, whatever they are, intrusive thoughts, they don't land as easily because you're able to differentiate very easily. That's not who I am.
Right. It's like we've always joked over the years about the people we call them aliens. And because they're like a rare breed of a human being, they're aliens. And you want to know what aliens are? Aliens were 100% loved by their mom and dad. And they can walk into a room with a man can walk into a room with pink sneakers, tan shorts, and a purple top and think he is awesome. And you're accepting of it. And you go, okay, cool. He's got pink sneakers on because he's confident and he knows that his parents love him. That's how we all need to be.
It radiates in his pink sneakers.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to be that jelly that when I walk, I just jello in and jello out, meaning I'm just smooth.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can wear a purple shirt and pink sneakers and be fine.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Do you understand the context of what I'm saying?
Well,
being that loved.
Well, we used to talk about this a lot when we were.
You're super cool.
We teach a lot about the Father's love. Is the difference between like even athletes or people? What happens when there's a genuine support and love, unconditional love in the framework of their life? It changes everything. You know, you can watch sports and you can watch when you watch athletics and you can see the people that act out in like dysfunctional, rebellious, they lose their temper all the time. You know, their root system was survival. Right. Now, God bless them. You know, many people have horrible journeys to work through, but there is something about a calmness, about knowing that you're loved. That's why we always go back to the root system of like, how was unconditional love
during tough times
and in your upbringing? You know?
That is the key. How were you taught to go through tough times?
Yep. Yeah. So
that's it.
So learn. People, well, how do I learn how to be afraid? People are always asking the rules, right? And it's not about rules. It's about learning in practice. You just practice. There's the thought. There's the thought. I don't have to be afraid of it. And the goal and the journey of healing is not the thought going away. We tend to like want it to go away. I feel stressed. I want stress to go away. Well, stress rises up. It's not like you can prevent all this from ever happening. It's not about the thought going away. It's about over time, you learning by practice, the volume of the thought begins to lose its power, its amplification. Because at first it's at 10, you know, and it's blasting. And it's like over time, through you learning not to respond to it. And it takes practice. And some days you're not that great at it. Some days your mood is lowered. You might be going through depression. You might be going through difficulties in your life, changes going on, and you're not responding to your thoughts very well. It's all about what unconditional love looks like to go, it's okay that you had a crazy thought pattern. And so like nurturing ourselves into a healthy place is something I've had to learn to practice over and over again.
Because most of us didn't grow up in a home where if you were having a tough time, you went to your parents and they said, or your parents went to you and said, because really that's what should be happening. The parent goes to the child. They recognize because they're aware of the atmosphere, what's happening. Hey, something's going on in you. What's going on? Tell mommy and daddy what's happening so I can help you walk through it. Most of the time, we kept it inside. We were ignored. No one knew what was going on inside of us. And so we had to create coping mechanisms. We've all had to do it.
Yep.
So the best gift you've given me in times like this and how we've been working on practicing a lot of these things as far as coming out of OCD type behaviors is, you know, I'm having a tough day or I'm an internal in my mind. And you say, well, what's going on? I tell you, well, yeah, we've gone through some stuff. You're depressed. Oh, yeah. Like we call it for what it is. And you talk to me lovingly. And it is so relieving. Oh, yeah.
So do you have, because I know for me, I've had to break through this wall, expressing something that's in the OCD category. And you respond to me, say, hey, listen, be kind to yourself. It's all right. you're going through some things. There is a what if, not a what if, a yeah but that comes up.
Right.
Did you experience the yeah but? Yeah, but I have this thing going on, because that's the thing I had to break through.
Yes.
You say you're going through some emotional things. You need to give gracious. Yeah, but I need to and that's the response that we have to starve.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's that is the battle too. So because I wasn't used to a loving response in that way. So it took time for my brain to adapt to you saying to me.
Right.
Because then I would still go, no, but this could still happen, and this happened, and because I had a history of proving, this is going to happen, and no one's going to be there to help me.
It's like there's a self-condemning, self-hating thing that says, just tell me I'm terrible. Just respond to me and tell me I'm awful and tell me I'm going to hell, and let's just be done with this already. Right. And that is a sign. Starvation is not even the word. You're starving for love. Right.
100%.
When OCD is manifesting, you are starving. You've been without the nutrition of love for such a long time.
Right. Yeah. That's the truth. Okay, let's go to the next one. We could go on and on about that one.
If these, while we're looking to look at the next question, if these materials are a blessing, check out markdejesus.com. We've got a donate page you can go to. Many different ways you can support one time or on a monthly basis. We're doing the best we can to be your brother and sister and encourage you. So go ahead.
All right. This is about intrusive thoughts and prayer. I have a lot of trouble focusing during prayer because of intrusive thoughts. I have been taught that it is better to say your prayers aloud, but I am not a very vocal person. I do my best communication through writing or typing. Is it okay to write down my prayers? Should I write them down and then read them aloud?
Let me give some feedback on how I take in questions.
I know, you're so good at this.
Well, I see the OCD patterns in the question.
Right, 100%.
Is it
okay?
Is it okay?
Should I? Mm-hmm.
Right. So remember, the problem is not the problem.
Right.
So when it comes to prayer is a conversation with God. If I have a conversation with you, is it good for me to write you letters? Yes or no?
Right.
Of course, you'd probably like them, wouldn't you? Is it?
No, I would be like, just tell me. And you're like, I just wrote you a bit.
Is it good for me to express to you? Yes. Is it good for me to spend time with you? Yes. So I like to encourage people, learn what right now best helps you to connect your heart to communion with God. Like what helps you connect to his love for you. And so that's a learning experience. Now, let me give you a feedback on a couple of things. I'm not a very vocal person. Okay. That's a belief statement. Mm-hmm. I'm not a very vocal person. Here's what we do with that. We take that and we make an indelible stamp in our personality as a fixed thing in life now. So now I'm not a vocal person follows you. I'm not a vocal person, so I'm in a group meeting.
I'm an introvert. I'm a this, I'm a that.
Thank you.
Right. Which
so
I don't like the personality things because of that. I think it puts me, I'm a this, I'm a number this, I'm a that, I'm a this.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes they can help you to understand yourself.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that they are not healthy, but whatever.
And y'all can have your own personal opinion.
You can have your own opinion.
But it's true. Mm-hmm. It's true. Personality profiles were intended to help notice patterns.
Right.
Remember, we talk about psychology. They do a good job of showing patterns. Like, oh, okay, that's kind of what that is.
Right. That helps you to understand yourself.
And then we can then go, okay, with that in mind, here's some things I need to be mindful of in my healing journey. What we tend to do is then take diagnosis or profiles. We box ourselves in. And it's like, no, God uses a lot of I don't talk people to actually be the person to talk. Mm-hmm. Like God takes Jeremiah, who's afraid of even looking at people's faces. And he's like, I'm going to use you as a prophet for the nation. Right. And you're going to build up, root down, that whole scripture, You
don't have to stay exactly as you are. You have a choice. You can grow. You can change.
So so going back to this prayer, how about we just let go that you're not a very vocal person?
Right.
Maybe you can learn. Maybe you need to learn because one of the greatest ways God has designed everything that he has created to manifest is through vocal cords. Mm-hmm. we wouldn't even be here in the world without his voice.
Right.
And God said, let there be. Everything he does echoes through the reverberation of sound, right? So even the gospel, faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word of God. So everything God does is through that. So what I would suggest is, can you write your prayers? Absolutely. Of course. But I would say, invite yourself into a season of practicing talking to God and just express what you're feeling, what you're going through. Learn to do that. Don't judge yourself. Now, I think that helps with intrusive thoughts. Because if I'm talking to you, right, and I'm really focused on you, I can't also focus on intrusive thoughts at the same time. The brain's not capable. Now, that thought may be going, I'm trying to talk to you, but I have this thing, right? The more I practice that intrusive thought actually dies.
Correct.
That's why I encourage sometimes redirecting to healthy self-talk, because you focus on the new narrative, and don't make prayer so complicated that your words got to be perfect. I work on that with my kids every day. We do time of prayer, and sometimes one of them, because they're fixing it. They're fixing their prayer.
Right.
Like, no, it's fine.
Well, and church hasn't helped this. Sorry.
You got to explain what you mean by that.
Church hasn't helped this, because in most churches, it's head down, it's time to pray.
Or it's, dear Heavenly Father, we come before you in the name of Jesus, and we just all eloquently, and it's like all these beautiful words. Like, what did you just say?
Right.
So this is the template I give the kids. Father, thank you for listening to me. I said, start with that sentence.
Right.
So you feel confident, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know the simplicity of just the best where you're at.
Right. So I've shared this before. To break out of this for me, I'd be in the car and I would think of, okay, God is right here in the car with me. Mm-hmm. If Mark was in the car with me, I would just be talking. Well, that's how we should be relating to God.
Yeah.
So when I'm alone in the car,
yeah.
First of all, no one knows if nowadays it's great because cell phones or earbuds, people don't know if you're talking to yourself, talking to God, talking to someone on the phone. They have no idea. So you can talk in your car and be fine. I practice out talking to God in the car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think,
when I'm by myself.
I think the talking needs practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But write down.
We haven't been told the value of our voice, especially men have not been told how powerful your voice is.
Yep.
So
writing prayers is great, though. I find journaling can be very, very helpful, can be a part of it. I will say that prayer is something that's interesting because when you pray, you tend to try to calm your inner faculties. And so for many people with anxiety, OCD, what's that?
I said we get super spiritual about it.
No, I wasn't going to go there.
Oh, no. Sorry.
It quiets you, so it can erupt the pain. It can erupt the tough feelings.
Okay.
And it can erupt the intrusive thoughts. I think that's what a lot of people end up running into. Like, okay, I get quiet to pray. It's like, oh, that thought that I kind of like buzz by and I'm afraid of it. Now it's like right there.
That's true.
So I think that you have to give yourself grace to practice this. You don't all of a sudden, buzz through your day and then go, okay, I want to learn how to have an hour with God. I used to do that. And it was like, okay, I'm 12 minutes in. This is a muscle that needs to be exercised. Start with 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. Start with just, Father, I know you love me. I come to you in Jesus' name, and I have these things on my heart. Help me. I know you're with me, and I'm just going to be kind to myself today. Amen. And just like learn to practice and then expand on that. Isn't that gracious? Right? Versus what, get your hour in, better get on your knees, better, whatever we say.
Right.
So, anyways, want to go to the next one?
Sure. Okay, this is a longer one, so we may have to, you can stop me at any moment if you feel like you want to.
Yeah.
Okay, this is about OCD, guilt, and confessing to other people.
The guilt confession stuff.
Guilt confession. Okay.
I am an expert.
Right. That's true.
In having this problem.
Right. Okay. So this person struggles with confessing to their boyfriend. So there is one thing I keep coming to that has been troublesome, and that's the ability to discern between what should be discussed and what shouldn't. A healthy relationship includes being honest with each other and owning up to mistakes. So I constantly face the question of, do I want to confess this because it's genuinely something I should bring up, or because I want to feel better? If I don't tell him, am I keeping a secret or hiding something? It feels so wrong sometimes, and it's hard to believe what I'm doing is the right thing. I love him and I want to honor him and do what's right, even if that means not telling him, but I often don't know how to differentiate. I spend so long going to what was easy, so just confessing it just in case, that now it's so difficult for me to see what's true, what is required of me if I feel I've done something wrong.
Okay, maybe let's pause there for a second. Because there's a bunch of things that I think are important. Mm-hmm. There's this guilt confession. And I want people to understand when I talk about guilt confession, there's guilt confession about something you feel like you violated something of God's ways, or something that you feel like relationally you've done that needs confessing. You need to confess to them. Everything I talk about in guilt confession applies to all of that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So even if it sounds like it's more like, I feel like I've done something wrong to God and I got to confess it to somebody, or I feel like I've done something to someone I need to apologize for. Mm-hmm. The guilt confession precepts I talk about are helpful for all of it. I think where you and I would look at this is, first and foremost, what's your relationship dynamic like with your boyfriend?
Correct.
Because this is about relationship, and OCD sufferers, their OCD's issues inflame in the context of getting closer in relationship.
Correct.
So a boyfriend, dating, getting engaged, mm-hmm. getting married, and then having children, all these things seem to like inflame. You want to get closer to God. It raises it mm-hmm. all up. Why? Because you're uncomfortable with unconditional love, and the relationship brings it out. And so relationships are not based on rules only.
Right.
That's a business deal.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. Hey, we're going to make sure, number one, we don't, number two, we don't do. That's called a business contract. It might make a good business interaction, but even in businesses, it's like, we're not robots. The best business interactions are relational, right? Okay. Relationship is not a set of rules, more as learning the art of relating. Right. It's very vulnerable. Like, we're broken. We have issues. We have struggles. Sometimes you don't know until you share. Oh, that was obsessive.
Right. Right.
Okay. So again, I need you, Mark, to tell me the rule. It's all throughout this.
What should I do?
A healthy relationship includes being honest with each other and owning up to mistakes. Mistakes. Okay. Right. So that one word, mistake to you has perfectionism in it. Mm-hmm. No tolerance for mistakes or errors.
Right.
What if you have a bad day? What if you guilt confess something? You went too far. Okay. I found for me, I learned in the mistakes, meaning that I found myself going, oh, I'm doing this a lot. Oh, it starts off with, we feel like good intentions. Right. And then we feel like whether you're confessing a sin of a thought you had, a thought you may think you've had, a thought of something you did, something you may have thought you did to someone else. Once you kind of have to figure it out once someone has mentioned to you, hey, you don't need to do that. Or you realize yourself, I'm doing this a lot.
Right.
That's when it's a signal, I'm being compelled by guilt. And the goal is, I just got to get rid of this guilt. Is it really about enhancing the relationship? No. Sometimes it's more about, I just need to feel better.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. But what happens is the distortions 1-7 all come into play, because then when you read the Bible, you're like, wait, confess your trespasses one to another that you may be healed. I'm not going to be healed because I didn't confess this. Right. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, it's totally distorted. You taking a thought that's floating by and confessing it. Or you're taking something that, where I found too is interacting with people. Because relationship interaction is vulnerable. You say things, you try to make a joke. Sometimes I try to make a joke and maybe no one laughs. Mm-hmm. And the interpretation comes, you offended them, you harmed them, you need to ask for forgiveness.
Right.
And you're like, you get stuck in that moment. Mm-hmm. And I had to learn, like, no, I just made a joke and they didn't think it was funny.
Right.
Right?
My brain is going onto a lot of pathways right now.
So, okay. Well, I'll keep going with my brain.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's the guilt confessor is tormented by the mindset that says, if you don't, you are hiding something. Right? And it takes, there's people out there that they hide in their lives. They hide in their lives, right? Mm-hmm. So you realize this person writing to me, I don't know anything about your life. I'm only knowing about what you're writing. It's clear that you have OCD issues. It looks like some of this goes even back to childhood, where you've noticed the patterns even in childhood. Right.
So, like I would have loved some of the her history. I feel like that when I read everyone's story, like, okay, let's chat. What was going on in your house? Because let's relate some of your story to where you had this guilt confession stuff. And you at 17, the pressure's on you to be perfect. There was a lot of perfectionism that was put on you.
Yep. And self. And self. That I came into agreement with as this is how I relate to my world. It took me a long time to figure that out.
Right.
I relate to my world by doing everything right.
Right.
Because I honor God and I love God and I obey his commands and blah, 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 blah. And I had a whole armament of it.
And then it was made worse being on staff, having to be perfect, not letting flaws be seen, not knowing where you stood. And you were, there's so much underneath that. There's so much. So that's why I always go back to the heart of all of this for me is back to safe relationship. So we started off kind of like what is the relationship like between you and your boyfriend? Is this someone you're going to marry? Did she put in there at all about that?
I don't think so. So it can be like, what's your relationship like with men? What was your father like? What was your mother like? Right? Because you may have had a history of, and you don't have to write back and explain.
Yeah, you don't. No.
We're using this subject to branch out to many different situations, right? But it's like some people then, not a great equipping relationship with your father, and then unhealthy relationship with men. There could have been a need to be loved, all those kind of things that chase down. And now you're trying to move into a healthier pattern, and then you're struggling with how to relate. So so you're going back to me. Mm-hmm. So for a while, the guilt confession seemed admirable. I would call people in my, this is during like right around before you and I met, I would call certain people in the church and apologize to them. Hey, I'm sorry if I ever, I can laugh about it now, but back then I would think about someone and really it was rooted in rejection. I thought I thought they were mad at me.
Right.
And when I'd walk by them, I'd get this vibe that they didn't really like me. So that would lead to a guilt confession.
Maybe I need to do something.
So I would call,
make it right.
And then what would happen is, at times I'd feel this relief. Oh, it's great.
Right.
Over time, it's like,
Yeah, that's yucky.
I got a couple embarrassing stories that, where I was like, oh, I didn't need to say anything, and my point being is that I learned in actually seeing over time the pattern. I had to be aware of input about my patterns and realizing, oh, yeah, I keep doing this. And you start to see it's not producing true fruit. Right. So then instead of confession is very helpful in like really getting to the heart of battles you have. I'm confessing to you, really OCD people, it's like, I'm confessing to you that I've got perfectionistic tendencies and I'm working on that. And I found that a lot of times, once I saw the guilt confession, I go, okay, I don't have to share this. And that was the hard thing. Because once I said I don't have to, and it was like these intrusive thoughts or things that fly by or every little thing, it was like that drug addict thing start to happen. Like, oh my goodness, what if? And I let myself go through the guilt and go through the anxiety, feel it, and just hang on the roller coaster. And all I would do is get like one little win.
Right.
We're like, I'm okay. Wow. And getting that confidence build over time helped. So
I just want to highlight,
because the question keeps going.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight a couple things that I think are important in this person's question. I have a hard time being on social media, specifically where I see other men. My mind goes crazy if I see a man who's attractive. This even can play with music. Certain music makes me think of another man. Okay. Then sexual feelings. What if I meant to do that? What if it was because that other person, now I've somehow cheated? All of this is screaming to me about intimacy and connectivity and relationship.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. So the enemy's twisting it and like, I'm dirty. I thought this guy was good looking. I thought all of this to me is pointing to intimacy.
Yeah. And don't we have a problem in our world, but also certainly in Christianity? We don't know how to relate to the opposite sex. We've really not been equipped.
No.
And I don't think, in my experience, in my own life, and many people that I've helped over the years, we don't know how to put beauty in its proper context. We see a handsome man, a beautiful woman, and it like it has to go into this deep narrative versus just go. I think healthy Christianity is, it's a beautiful lady. Okay, moving on. It's a handsome guy. Moving on. I don't think Jesus was like, there's a lady over there. I better not. Look at it. There's a beautiful lady. It's.
Well,
I think we have such a fear that when we look, maybe it stirs something, because that's what attraction does. Stirs something. We're so scared of ourselves, so scared of true healthy relationship. We have no model for it. It automatically goes down a very distorted narrative, and then we're all like hiding.
Right. Oh, it is so true. It's so true. And I think for me, I always bring it back to the family and growing up and how you saw your, sorry, I have to bring it back and hammer this point because it's the truth. How did you see your parents relate? How did you interact with siblings? In my family, unfortunately, we had a breach in our family, divorces. My brother lived with my dad. So I didn't like really grow up with my brother. In turn, I didn't have a very balanced relationship with him. So I didn't really, in connecting with my father, connecting with my brother, my relationship as far as viewing men was very, very skewed. Right. So as soon as a man gave me attention, it was on like Donkey Kong, okay? I was like
right in there, a healthy pattern. So like if a man gives you attention, it's like, oh, that man was nice to me. I appreciate that. Instead, it went
into an addictive pattern. So now, then as I was even in relationships in my 20s, if I'm in a relationship with a boyfriend and another guy even looked at me or talked to me, my brain instantly took that as attention. So then I thought, something wrong. So I don't know if this is your story. I took it as, oh my gosh, I must like this person. He likes me. I talked to him too long. I flirted with him too long. Maybe they think I like him now.
Yep, and
because my brain was not wired healthily.
And it go to, well, I had a thought, oh, they're attractive, and now I'm cheating. The OCD thought action fusion comes in, which means if you have a thought, it's the same as acting on it.
Correct.
And then it goes even further. You think you did already act on it, but you aren't aware. There's the altered reality that you start to go into. That maybe I did, and now you're engaging your thoughts as though you did. And so the whole thing takes you off track versus going, because I could say the same thing in my own journey of not, I don't know how to relate to females in a healthy way. And I was like, that part is very immature in me. So you don't know how to just appreciate just a healthy, normal interaction. Right. Everything gets like
convoluted. I think a lot of people struggle with this and we're not having honest conversations. We're not.
It's true.
We are growing up in homes where we're not even relating to our fathers and brothers healthily in them honoring and respecting women, what that looks like. We're not even communicating properly. So now you're grown up, you get saved and you go to church and there's all these people around you trying to interact with you and you have no idea how am I supposed to be a Christian? How am I supposed to be a single Christian woman in a church? And it's a nightmare.
Right.
I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but
no, do as many tangents as you want. That's what this is. This is a tangent show.
I feel like at some point, and maybe people can let us know, because Mark and I have had, I referenced my history with men, and you were very immature in how you handled relationships and women. We had to walk through this in an epic way when we got together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe at some point down the road we can do a video. Maybe you can let us know feedback.
It was decision. We're two hot messes. What are we going to do with this? Do we want a great relationship? And you and I made a decision more than anything else. We want to have a great relationship. And we're going to realize that our battles are not our identity.
Well, I was going to say that it worked. It had to be based on how we saw each other in our sin.
Right.
How we looked at each other as a brother and sister in Christ first.
Right.
And loved each other in that first, and in how we worked with each other as husband and wife. That
was a grace that really helped us, because it was like no matter what you're sharing, that's not who you are. That's not who you are. It may be a battle you have.
Correct.
Like you have anxiety, but you're not anxiety.
Right.
And that gets tricky, because we live in a society where people take on their diagnosis as their identity, and they carry it, and they want everybody to be aware of it. Like, right. Hey, just so you know, I have, and it's like, it becomes an identity thing where it's like, no, I have it. I'm free to talk about it. I'm working through it. I'm healing. I'm overcoming, but I know I need to be stretched.
Right.
I know that there's times so I think that,
because it would help if we would bring something to each other, and you were not looking at me at a place of fear, disgust, whatever.
Right.
Oh, what's going on with her?
Right.
You lovingly, okay, well, you know what? Do you need me to pray with you about this?
Right. Lots of compassion, lots of understanding.
Yes, because we were hot messes coming together with two very different histories that were very broken.
And there are times where you would say to me, you need to knock it off.
Right.
And many times you need, OCD sufferers actually need that. They need that, like, hey, can't do it anymore. Can't do this thing anymore. You're spinning about that verse in the Bible, can't do it anymore. I tell some OCD sufferers, take a break from the Bible right now. You don't know how to read it right now. We got to reset some things.
Right.
And they're like, oh, he's telling me not to read the Bible. Now I'm really in for judgment. It's like there's a truth of cutting to it that caused me to sober up, of like, wow, I realize my obsessiveness is infecting our interaction.
Right.
Right?
Where it would exhaust me, and I didn't want to feel exhausted with you.
So that's sobriety.
Right.
And alcoholic starts to get better when they go, wow, my life affects people.
The impact of what I've, right.
Isn't that one of the problems of addiction? You're disconnected from consequences.
Correct.
It's a key component.
100%.
And so OCD, you're spinning in your own eyes. You don't realize other people do get affected by this constant spinning. So it's not a pressure performance thing. It's a sobriety. Like, you know what? I got to take a stand against this, because it's not just me. It infects other people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So let me
I was going to
skip to this part here.
I was going to just do that.
I'll jump in.
Yep.
Because the question says, these thoughts can become consuming, can affect my relationship with God. So that's a clear sign. It's OCD. So your journey is detoxing guilt and anxiety. Guilt and anxiety are your driving mechanisms of how you, and shame. Guilt and anxiety become your driving thoughts. That's what motivates you the most. And so it's easy to fall into that because they're the loudest voices. Love doesn't scream at you. Grace.
And we don't a lot of us don't know the sound of that.
Right. So it's like,
Could make me cry. Yeah.
yeah, I'm
weepy today.
I've been in and out of feeling that myself too. Yeah. I'm like, keep it together, Mark. So it feels as if I need to fix this first and then come to God. There's your diagnostic right there.
You're not good enough until you, right.
So this is the biggest challenge, because love is hard work, but it's work of the heart, not with the head, of figuring it out. I got to get this fixed, then come to God. We got to shift that. Yeah. Go to God, receiving his love, and letting that fix it start to dissolve. We got to switch the priority. So I'm working on being loved in the midst of everything, but so difficult to believe that I can just come before I've fixed these things. So that's conditioning too. So it goes back to your upbringing. Yeah. It goes back to your upbringing in the faith. Because countless people are recognizing, man, the way I came into Christianity, what I was introduced to. What's also your upbringing? This confession to others was a large problem when I was a kid. Okay, there we go. So I can look back too and see where the pattern started, but then it gets validated. Right. Oh, bless you, you're forgiven, it's okay. And you feel that like feedback loop, like, oh, this is a good thing. Right. We're just trying to figure this out. The confession to others was a large problem. I confessed obsessively to God, and I would seek reassurance from my mom that she wasn't upset with me.
That speaks a lot.
We've now hit ground zero. Yep.
Nurture.
Lack of nurture from mom.
And go to the next page, top sentence is it.
I would confess to a friend if I simply had a negative thought about them. Right. It's just a thought. Let the thought pass on by. I talk about that in the thought section. I found a lot of freedom from this as I grew up. But since getting into a relationship, it feels like it's coming back in a wave. Right.
Intimacy.
I think that I find a lot of people talk about their mental health battles in it went away and now it's back.
Right.
We do that a lot.
We do that.
A lot of people write in their story to me, hey, when I was 17, I was healed. I was completely healed from depression. And now I'm 40 and I feel like it's come back. And it's like, I'm not saying you weren't healed. What I'm saying is that it's a very black and white assessment. It's like it's either it's out or it's in. Let's look at this. True. Let's look at this more as we're just growing. It's not about that you were free from this and now all of a sudden it's back. You're going deeper and deeper relationships. When I was single, I could do a lot of things based on my goofy brokenness that I never was aware of.
Right.
Because I didn't have a committed relationship that would cause me to face things. Right? It's like, I'll avoid that. Or I wasn't actively thinking that, but it wasn't until I came into committed relationship, I got to deal with these things. So I could think, oh, meeting you brought it up. Well, it's been there.
Right.
Now I'm just having to face it.
Right. And you need to grow and become one with the other person. Right.
Right. So yes, you're right when you say I think it's very connected to relationship, people who I value deeply. I don't want this to negatively affect this relationship. That's good. That's good. You don't want, so I've been fighting, but it's resulted in a lot of stress on my part. Now, like I said, I think it's learning to practice. It's learning to practice. Like if you have a guilt confession issue, many times you don't realize it until you've already done it to then kind of go, all right, this is, I need to starve this pattern. I think in relating to the opposite sex, I think we all could use some good learning on how to interact with each other in healthy ways.
Ain't that the truth?
Because many people who have a OCD on their meeting with a client, and it's not like they're alone or something like that. They're in a public space. So they have to meet with someone who's of the opposite sex, and they have a thought, oh, she's attractive, and then they just want to get out of the meeting. So
Can I say something funny? Can I? We are not used to seeing like super good looking people. I'm not saying we're not good looking, or you're not. But we are not used to seeing like super, we always joke, like if you saw Cindy Crawford in the airport, I would be like, look at her. What? That's a superhuman. Do you remember when I went to the doctor that one time and the guy he was training the doctor and the doctor came in? He looked like Superman, and I'm not even kidding. He came through the door and I instantly was like, oh my gosh, I came home and I told you I was laughing so hard. We laughed about it because I got so awkward. He was so uncomfortable. I wanted to leave the doctor's office.
He was so good looking.
He was so good looking. And you're not used to seeing attractive people like that either. I'm sorry.
It's true.
Normal everyday people are not like a 10. They're not.
Yeah. There are a lot of blessings in being a 10. You can walk through a room and there's just a lot of like favor that you
have a booger on you and no one cares because you're just good looking. Okay. But
now I want to say this.
Sorry,
though.
I had to bring that.
It's fine. But I want to say this too. You and I have worked hard at cultivating that. Cultivating that safety of like, yeah, my heart is always to love you.
Right.
And there, if there was ever a time where he'd be like, you know what, I think you're talking a little bit, we would bring that out.
Right.
You know, if we needed to. Mm-hmm. But I think that this goes back to how you conduct relationship, you know?
Totally.
And I think that, so going back to the story of the guy with the lady who's attractive, and then he goes, "Oh my, I feel like I'm attracted to her. Maybe I'm going to have an affair. I'm going to cheat." So now he's withdrawing from the meeting. The meeting doesn't go very well. Maybe he just gets through it, but then he avoids meetings like that.
Right.
That's many times you have to practice learning to talk with people that are. I'm not saying you have to go talk to attractive people, but those moments that are unavoidable, maybe you're walking down the street or you're glancing through social media, we have to learn practicing to go, it's an attractive person, it's all right.
Right.
It doesn't have to mean anything more than that.
Exactly.
It doesn't.
Right.
And like you said, you're in a funny way basically saying we don't have examples, and quite frankly, you know, they are a rare species. That's why people can stand in the mall and go, "Hey, you," and they got a clipboard going, "We're going to sign you up to be a fashion model," right?
We have to be able to, because you and I had a good laugh about it, and I'm grateful that you weren't like, "Did you think he was good looking?" It's like,
okay,
he
so
was.
and if let's say if that did come up, that's my insecurity I got to work through.
Which that's the whole other piece.
And some of that is
but whatever.
Some of that's my own work. Some of it is maybe talking it out. But I think culturally, we saw it in pastoring too. Men and women did not know how to interact with each other.
No.
It was like men wouldn't talk to a woman unless he needed a date. He wanted a date.
That's true.
And it was like, wait a second, we're brothers and sisters. Can you start with that? So our base premise is, I'm your, first and foremost, eternally, I'm your brother in Christ.
Exactly. It's the truth.
We joking, like, in heaven, are we going to be like, hey like,
what's
up? Like we're going to like pound?
Remember when we had that life down there?
Because we're going to be...
Gotta go. I got stuff to do.
Married. We're going to be wed to Christ.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
oh my gosh.
You know, so, but that's our primary, that's the foundational relationship, brother and sister. If you start there, that's a healthier way to begin. Even if you see someone, you know, is attractive, it's like a person's, you know, created by God, see them from that brother-sister standpoint. It sets a foundation of respect. Right. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Respecting that person, but then also cultivating that groundedness in how you interact. All right.
Excellent.
Let's go through some of these other ones. Maybe
let's do it. Can you just take the paper off there so I can see the timestamp? Thank you. Thank you, my dear.
Oh, we're good. We got a little more time.
Okay. Is this helping everybody? I hope it is. Okay, so this is a good one. This is a really good question, okay? Can OCD sufferers hear God's voice? Is there any hope for being able to hear God's voice as an OCD sufferer? And I don't mean hear his voice in the sense of getting guidance to make a decision. I mean just to enjoy his presence and relate to him as a friend. Anytime I have silence or stillness, fearful voices rush in to fill the void, and I can't imagine ever being able to hear God say anything to me over all noise, especially as I know shouting isn't really his style.
That's good.
Or being passive aggressive. What's your experience? Mm-hmm. Great question.
So, can an OCD sufferer hear God's voice? Yeah, I if you were to ask me, do you hear God's voice? I do sense I've learned his leading and his prompting, it's a totally different wavelength than what I used to listen to. What I used to listen to was all perfectionism, shame, fear, pressure, guilt.
You're not good enough.
It was all that. I would say 95% of what I attributed to hearing God's voice was fixing things that I felt I needed to fix. And so when I began to just learn to receive his love, learn to receive his grace, and like, it took me some years of detoxing condemnation, detoxing guilt. Then I began to realize, I learned some things about God's voice and leading is, first and foremost, it's a father speaking to a son, father speaking to a daughter. Now, does a good father come in and go, hey, I need you to clean your room and fix your hair and do this and do that? Now, is that the primary way he relates? No, it's, hey, let's dine together. Let's sit. Let's enjoy. So I think that I had to learn to starve the compulsion of needing to, like, God, speak to me, tell me, what do I need to do? I let it go. I let go of needing to hear from God perfectly. I let go of needing. There was a time in my life where, like, I was so hungry for God, I was fasting and praying. Like, I wanted to experience God so much. I wanted Jesus to walk in the room. I was in a phase of Jesus walk into the room. That's
because we were around people.
Well, I listened to stories of people who had this, or maybe they felt an angelic experience of this.
Did you really want God to walk in the room? Because that would scare me. Could you really open your eyes and look and see Jesus?
Well, when you read all the biblical accounts, right, they're like,
I'm good. Okay. I don't need that.
So I think that, yes, I believe you can, but my encouragement is let go of having to hear, let go. And instead, this is where I would start, because I'm very practical, because many people can't even connect to God's love. So if you're struggling to connect to God's love, what's the point in then trying to hear what he has to say? Because you're going to be so open to accusation.
You're going to hear accusation, correct.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I say, well, start with learning what love is. And start by, you may, I don't know, where is he? Why don't you just talk to yourself for a second and go, hey, Mark de Jesus, I'm gonna start being kind to you and how so I started to be kind to myself and how I address my own thoughts. Because usually there's a world of muck in how we beat ourselves up that we've come into agreement with. I said, you know what? I'm going to take the pressure off of me. I'm going to be kinder in how I evaluate myself. And then let the things bubble up as they happen. I think for anyone with any area of mental health struggles they're aware of, someone who knows your battle, sometimes I think it's so healthy to go, hey, this is what I was sensing. Mm-hmm. I was sensing God was saying, what do you think? Right. And being open to that.
Right.
I think it's very, very healthy. Yeah. But my thing is, don't take the pressure off. And I mean, don't put the pressure on yourself. Take the pressure off of having to, I got to hear. Instead, you said, I want to just enjoy his presence, relate to him as a friend. Okay, then start with that. What is a good friend? What is a good friend?
You know, there's something very practical.
I have a friend. His name is
Brown. Where is
Jesus. Jesus.
Amen. Anyway, a very practical thing that you suggested that we did a long time ago, and I know you've recommended this to coaching clients. When you can't get still and the voices are, intruding into your mind and you're trying to pray, put your hand on your heart, because sometimes that just helps. It's like self-talk. It just helps to have a focal point, my heart. God, I know you love me. You accept me exactly where I am today. And sit in that as long as you can. And if you have to just say those things, we've even said, God loves me. I love myself. I have what it takes to overcome. Simple things that you can say that just redirect. Right. And once that you feel like, okay, I can't do that anymore, that's fine. Do it later, tomorrow.
Right.
Pick up where you left off. Just help redirect.
Yeah.
Where the mind just...
Yeah, I found it very helpful to allow myself to discover. Mm-hmm. and OCD sufferers are so afraid of getting it wrong.
Correct.
Doing it wrong. What if I do? What if I do? What if I, and it's like, you don't allow yourself to just take the journey. And so that hand over the heart, you know where I learned that from? In working through some of my anxiety over like public speaking, I'd have you pray for me.
That's true.
And what would you do when you would pray for me?
Put my hand on your heart.
And
Always.
You would pray.
I would come right up to you.
And it's like, I would feel this like I just like, because that's where anxiousness would just collide, is right here in my chest. And you'd put your hand over there, and it made me realize that was such a foreign thing, the touch.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, well, what if I just do that? It's not rocket science. It's just more like learning. Oh, and some people will give themselves a hug, or just, like there's things that sometimes we just learn. And I learned in the talking to myself, like, wow, I can really encourage myself in practicing this. Mark, I tried it for 2 days and it didn't work.
That's true. Right.
This is a journey.
That's why we need to do a video too on praying for your spouse, because we're really big on that.
Yeah.
Because spouses don't really do that. And if they do, they don't like touch each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyways, that's a whole other topic. Do you feel like you want to say anything else to this, Boo?
No.
Okay. Next. Should someone with religious OCD have a religious, I think that's the big thing, a religious mentor that she consults to see if God is really asking them to do something they fear, or if it is an OCD spiral of condemnation?
I don't think most like religious mentoring voices can be very helpful if they don't understand OCD.
Yeah.
They just don't.
It's a real tough
They just
one.
don't. And OCD is not a new thing. And if you go to the video I did on scrupulosity, I make the case it's been around since the beginning.
Yeah, and I have to say, you can speak to this with most of the coaching clients and people. Pastors make this 100 times worse with a lot of the things they will say religiously.
A lot of times they don't mean to.
They don't mean to. You're right.
Should go, hey, I feel like
I'm not saved.
Right. So then they go 10 reasons why you're saved. They get out a whiteboard. And it's like, no.
And you're like, you just sent them further down.
That's
to a
not
spiral.
it. It's not going to solve it. So I think what I would recommend, I'm going to say something that people really disagree with me on. I think a lot of times religious OCD sufferers can get frustrated because maybe they're going to a counselor who's secular, right? And they're like, well,
we're not talking about God enough.
They're not talking about God enough. You may need that outside of the box.
Right.
Where they're just going to deal with your symptomatic issues. You may need that. So my feedback is, I'd probably, if you have OCD, start with OCD like therapy, because they're just going to look at those flags of those areas. They're not going to chase your problems. So true. Whereas an elder or spiritually, unless they're aware that you're OCD and they're not going to feed your compulsions, they'll keep targeting. Nope, you need to starve this. Or it's like, no, we're gonna teach you how not to be afraid of it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
So you have, anyways, is that
yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to just
drag on and on.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
We're fine.
Are we?
We're fine. Let's keep going through some of these.
How we doing, everybody? You good over there?
I got some wind in my sails.
Got some good help. Thank you, Courtney.
Somebody wrote huge help. That's great.
Courtney K. Thank you. Do you want to look there, or do you want me to continue here?
So, yeah, keep going.
Okay. Am I in unbelief because I don't feel saved? Just because I don't feel saved, does that mean I live in unbelief?
So that's the problem is not the problem.
Right.
So
we kind of just answered that a little bit.
It would be like saying, somebody saying who's married, if you don't feel like you're in love with your spouse, does that mean you're not married?
Right.
Now, anyone logically would say, of course not. You're married. But I don't feel like I'm married. I don't feel like I'm in love. And so that, but then again, if we chase this, It's like whack-a-mole. It'll chase another one. But yeah, but this, it's like, am I saved? Did you make a decision? Yeah, I made a decision. That's what this is all based on. We made a decision. Right. When I first became born again, I didn't have all the stars aligning and everything just right. There are many times I rededicated. Yeah. I got resaved many times. My life and my journey, mostly out of that guilt compulsion kind of thing. And so it's a decision, and now let's keep moving forward. God is with me. I'm struggling to feel it, and that's okay.
Right.
I'm going to learn. My feelings will learn as I learn to keep experiencing the new direction. If I keep checking and checking and checking, I'll never come into the beauty of greater experience.
Right. Plus, there's a lot of rejection book would be really good for that too.
Could be. Because that root of rejection always creates that sense of distance. Yep.
Distance. Yep. Okay. OCD and panic attacks with confession compulsion. What if the panic attack relates to confession compulsion? AKA, I feel the need to confess sometimes and have panic attacks over it. I have panic attacks over most things.
Yeah, it's very common that a confession compulsion will lead to anxiety and lead to then panic, because the guilt has with it, like, you must do this or there will be punishment, right? So 1 John 4:18 is your deep dive. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment, or fear involves punishment. So I did an anxiety disorder series. I'd recommend that. And OCD and anxiety disorders often tie into each other. You develop a panic response to it because because of the fear that drives it. And right. God is not a God who uses fear to try. He doesn't make you anxious to get you to do something. And there's a simple reason for that. If he does, he is now a puppet master who controls you with strings. Let me pull the anxiety string to get you to do something.
Right.
He's relational. And so, anyway, yeah.
That's good. I just happened to see, I think this is a great question to jump to. How do you, right, the second one from the bottom, how do you stop random negative pictures coming into your mind?
You don't.
Right.
You don't.
We just talked about
this. If you try to stop it, it will get worse. I'm not going to think. It's going to increase. That's the psychological answer. I'll give you the biblical answer. I can give you both. Right. Because some people are like, I don't like the psychology answer. Okay, fine. I'll give you the biblical answer. You act on the law, which says thou shalt not. It makes the law and sin increase
100 times worse.
No one right now think of this thought. Everyone's going to be tempted to think of it, right? That doesn't produce freedom. We need a greater way to produce freedom. So part of it is not allowing yourself to feed the fear of it.
Right.
Now, you may be disturbed. Oh my, that thought is. And what you need to allow yourself to do is lean in through the anxiety while that thought's there, and just letting it flow out of your system. The way I teach this to our kids is the airplane.
Correct. I was just going to say the
airplane. We did a picture of an airplane, and we talk about, because I'm giving them a grid of thoughts.
Yeah.
There's a thought. There's the airplane. Hey, there's an airplane. Now, eventually the airplane goes off in the distance. We can't see it anymore, or it goes off in the tree line. And I talked to them, what happens then if we take the plane and we want to circle it back, and then we want it to land, and then we're what do you call it when people get off the plane?
Deplaning.
No. Deplaning. Deplaning. Is that like complaining, but you're deplaning?
I've lost my mind. I've lost my mind.
Where's the word I'm looking for?
It's deplane, isn't it? What is it? Somebody tell us.
No, what do they say? We're now going to
exit.
No, it's a D word, like disembark,
Maybe it is. Does someone know?
I just got stuck.
Oh my gosh.
I just got brain stuck.
That's it. It's all over.
Anyways, so the plane comes down and there's people coming off the plane, And what do? Just get everybody back on the plane. Sorry, wrong location. Not you, because the airport is you. Nope, this isn't here. Right? Send the plane back off. And so, so I think that the pictures in your mind, it'll take time for you to practice not being afraid. And the less you're afraid of it, the less it has a hold. It's like when it's like the bully that keeps bullying you and you respond and you react. Well, it gets a reaction out of you. Mm-hmm. When you just stop reacting, it's like there's nothing to grab onto anymore because you're just not feeding it.
Right. Disembark.
Disembark. Thank you.
Or it is deplaned. You know what? Thank you.
It is deplaned.
Kira.
I looked it up.
Okay.
That's what's funny when you do
yes,
a broadcast
I was right.
for people with OCD issues. They're like,
thank you.
So it's all creating a nurturing environment as the thought passes through. In every Christian's journey, you'll have some of the oddest, weirdest, strangest thoughts float by.
It's the truth.
And I say float by because that's important for you to understand.
Right.
It's a floating by. We got caught into grabbing them, examining them.
It's the truth.
And they were just meant to float by. Whether it's the devil, the pizza you ate, or
you didn't sleep. Who knows?
That's the biggest one for me. I go, man, I didn't sleep good last night. And look, and you're just kind of like,
right.
You get
Then by 2:00, it's like, what's wrong with me? I think I'm dying. Well, I only got 3 hours of sleep last night.
It's one of the biggest indicators of troubling, 2 days of bad sleep or no sleep, and you're equal to someone who's drunk.
Right. Mental illness, they say. I thought you're on the verge of that.
Well, yeah, because it equals that state of just, anyway.
All right.
Did I? Oh, that was this question.
What? I need to write it down.
So anyways, go ahead to the next one.
Oh, yeah, that was the next. Sorry. Okay. Fear of death, anxiety, panic, phobia, and OCD. Okay. When I have a victory and experience some freedom from fear, I then get hit hard with a thought and feeling that death is imminent. It is compared to that term, waiting for the next shoe to drop. Yep, only on steroids. Why? Is this a panic attack from overcoming a fear? This popped up in my thoughts when asked, how often do we worry about what's happened? My first thought was, no, worse happens. I think a lot of people have this problem. So all the same is to be applied, self-nurture, etc., which is the question. It is really hard to live with death hanging over my head, and it has for years since I was a little kid, some seasons worse than others. Panic always starts rising with prayer lists in church, medical spots on TV, Facebook friends who go on and on about medical and doctors and appointments. Is this a phobia? If I avoid it, it leads to isolation, and I don't want that. When I was a kid through my late 20s and 30s, always was waiting for that shoe to drop after something good would happen. Somewhere it seemed to go away, but then I realized it was gone, or I never thought about it or was conscious of it till it reappeared. Now it's worse than ever in the form of, I am going to die very soon and alone. It's paralyzing. I have been told only by someone who doesn't really know Jesus would have a fear of death. Oh, that's awful. Is there hope to overcome this fear, anxiety, and panic attack producing fear? Of course, the answer is yes, and you have given so many active ways to seek God and nurture ourselves, talk to ourselves. Do I just need to trust God and his process? Well, I think a lot of people go through that.
Yeah, for sure. I would not, in response to this, just tell you trust God and his process. That is a very common Christian cliche that's just thrown at people. Mm-hmm. You need to trust God and his process. Translation, I don't have time to deal with you right now, so just trust God. Mm-hmm. So trust God has become, it's almost lost its meaning. True. Because we just say it. Just trust God. I just got to learn to trust God. What does that even mean?
Right.
So first of all, I think a lot of these things that you read were things that we battle with. I think everyone battles with it. And it reveals to me that the primary lens by which you see the world is fear-based. That's the primary way that you relate to the world around you. So safety, confidence, and then you add into this a punishing view of God. So someone tells you, people who don't really know Jesus have fear of death. And I'm sorry.
Awful.
I'm sorry that we give that kind of advice. You're already struggling, and now they're saying. I remember early on in my stages, someone said to me, "Oh, Mark, you struggle with that because you're not really born again." It was like, I'm having this problem, and now you're saying my whole Christian life is a fraud.
Yeah,
like
Christians can say the most awful things when you're
sure.
going through,
for sure,
hard times, or yeah.
So when I was a kid, late 20s, 30s, always waiting for the shoe to drop, I think that I look back, like, what was life like growing up?
Right. And how did you go through hard times? What was the...
Yeah. I'd really recommend going through, and this is, because I relate to a lot of this in my history. It just dawned on me one day, okay, 90% of how I think is fear-based. Mm-hmm. And some days, let's just clock it up to just an even 100 so that I don't play games with myself. It's like, I relate to the world through a fear-based thing. Read the Bible, it triggers fear. Read about the end times, triggers fear. Read about this, watch the news, triggers fear. So I would recommend a lot of my materials, whether it's I Will Not Fear, my anxiety disorder stuff, just anything I write about, just allowing ourselves to be renewed in the faith, hope, and love. Those three, the Bible says these three remain, but the greatest is love. And so love is really the issue of learning what it means to be safe with a loving Father, be safe in yourself. And you mentioned here, you've given so many active ways to seek God and nurture ourselves, talk to ourselves. I would encourage you to keep practicing that. Trust is built on learning what love is and begin to take steps of vulnerability and take steps. God, it's not just like I just trust God, just blindly without learning who he is. Peter said this, he said, cast your cares on him because he cares for you. So I'm learning God's care for me. I'm learning to cast those cares on him. While I cast the cares, they both work with each other. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, we tell people, just trust God. Well, do you know who he is as a loving Father? Do you know who are you trusting? And for most people, they're trusting a God that says, you better get this right or judgment's coming. And
right.
it's like that doesn't create trust. That creates pure fear, pure avoidance. I think it's good that you realize that there's some ways that this could lead you into isolation. These can become phobias for sure. And it you see that like where it wants to push you back. So I really understand.
Yeah, I understand this battle big time. It's something I have had to work very, very hard on overcoming, especially when you go through things in your life that you were not equipped to deal with. Mm-hmm. And I know for me growing up, how my family dealt with things was very dramatic and highlighting the pain and highlighting all these things. So I was pretty much kind of wired like that. So when we went through a lot early on in our marriage, we had a flood in our house and car accidents and, going through with Max. And I always felt like we were doomed. That's it. What's next? We were doomed.
Right. And is it like the enemy's always going to win? Is this God doing this because we made the wrong decisions? You fall into those things very easily.
Absolutely.
When there's vulnerable fear-based perspectives in you.
Yeah, and it was very multifaceted for me and I still have to work through this, especially through a lot that everybody's been through in the past year on feeling secure, feeling stable. There's parts too of recognizing we all go through troubles. Mm-hmm. Everybody goes through stuff.
That's right.
And how am I prepared to go through that?
Yeah, we do believe a myth that if you get your stuff right, you'll have this blessed life, and it's portrayed in a lot of teachings, like how to be prosperous, how to have a blessed life, and it can subliminally teach people if there are things that go wrong, it means because you've done something wrong, and that leads you to a hopeless place.
Which really, like God must really not love you or be seeing you or protecting you, and right. It's a loop. Anyways,
I see the next one has got some end time stuff in it.
Oh, hey now.
Going into the end times. Let's finish this thing.
All right, let's just do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Mark, I've been watching your channel for a few months now. Thank you very much. And was really hit hard by your OCD content. I've been told by doctors that I have some OCD tendencies, but I didn't think much of it because I am not a neat freak or a germphobe. Yep. But after listening to you, I can really see how it fits me a lot more than I thought. My question for you is, can you do videos on how this pandemic and fear of the four horsemen of Revelation, one world order can really mess with people? I'm not asking that very well. I'm having problems with the lockdowns and surveillance and with the fear that's all going to get worse, followed by food shortage, things being expensive, starvation, homelessness because of financial fallout with all this mess. So I've been in an agonizing loop of trying to figure out what to do to prepare for what if I have to be homeless? What if I have to find food in the wild? It seems to blow out of proportion to the current situation. It's wreaking havoc on my life, along with the fear of disobeying God if I don't prepare, like prep for a long time. I don't know if a lot of other listeners struggle with this. I thought I'd mention it. Thanks for all that you and Melissa do. It's helping me a lot. I think everyone is struggling with this. Thank you for this question, because I think we've struggled with this. Oh, well, I have.
Yeah, it's got.
I've bought some extra canned goods.
It's got some deep dives into that four horsemen of Revelation.
Yeah,
and everything.
hey now.
So when I left the staff position that I was on, we got married. We started a whole new ministry. One of the things I was saying, and this was in the mid, 2005, 2006, 2007. I kept saying over and over again, like, we have got to deal with our fear-based perspectives.
Yeah.
Like, it is everywhere. And to be honest, I got a lot of crickets, like, yeah, I don't have anxiety, or I don't know. I feel like people were just disconnected to how much fear is a part of how they think. So it can be great to prepare, to have insurance, to have some food stocked up, but we have to really be, and all of us have to do an honest assessment of ourselves. How much am I letting fear drive this? And how much am I just one day at a time, just being sober about my days, being wise about my decisions, being wise financially? The problem is that fear is infected so much.
Yeah.
It creates a lot of panic things. And all the things that we could look at in the world system and the economics and the geopolitical things, fear is and will continue to be a driving force. And you said, can I do videos? I've tried to do a lot of videos on, we've got to get this fear factor out. And it seems that people are just like, I feel like there's a blindedness at how much people are driven by fear.
Correct.
Right? And there's those who like to write this question that they're more honest about it. Man, I'm thinking about this. I'm concerned about this.
Right. I think most people are struggling with this right now.
Absolutely. I'm super concerned about the lockdown, super concerned about the approach to that. I feel like we've dismissed, we've not engaged what true health is, how to have a strong physiology, how to not be in fear, how to that's all been, pushed aside for other things. And it's very disturbing to see that happening. And I think that we lose discernment on how much and the thing about fear is you have to admit, hey, fear's driving my life. We're often defensive of our fears. And that's the first wall I bump up into in teaching.
Yeah,
people go, I don't have fear. It's just concern. No, I've had people say to me, no, Mark, this is real fear. I go, oh, we have real fear and fake fear now.
Right.
Do we have fake real fear? Do we have semi-fake fear?
Right.
So now we're taking fear and we're arguing over whether we have it or not. People say, I have zero fear in my life. You're like, I said, your 401k gets touched and in 5 seconds you'll have a panic attack.
It's very true. Right.
So I think that the focus of the work is not the four horsemen of Revelation, the one world order, lockdown, surveillance. That's not the focus. If that becomes your focus, you can easily get distracted in the subjects. and then you're spinning or arguing about the subjects, and it can be very distracting. And I think the enemy likes that.
Right.
Likes us getting
It's
distracted.
distracted.
So you're arguing about politics or arguing about this, arguing of that. We have to keep things down to the simplicity of God's never calling us to be afraid. And Psalm 91 is a great illustration of it. You're going to see stuff happen in Psalm 91. Psalm 91 doesn't say, you'll never see anything is beautiful. He's saying you'll see the destruction. You're going to see stuff happening. That stuff ain't, there's so much he talks about the shelter, and it will not come near you. And you can have that confidence in God, right? So, but I also want to exhort you with compassion. Like, I'm not yelling at you to hurry up and just get rid of all your fears. These fears are here, and there's a history of it, and you have OCD tendencies. So I would encourage this question and the previous question. I did the anxiety disorder series. I can't recommend that enough, because I may start talking about phobias, but then I get into scriptures and passages and things that's really, this is for all of us, right? But we're all in such denial many times of our fear issues. So if you're like, man, I feel this like all coming to the surface, I say better than the person who's shoved them all down and doesn't want to deal with anything, you know? And so I think that here's what I feel in these day and age. If you can have one person that you are equally yoked with, where you can have some conversation, where there's like some linked hearts on some perspectives. Right. You can encourage each other. I'm not saying 10 people or you got to find the perfect church. You can find one person. And if you don't have it, pray for that. I mean, God, just one person that I can have some interaction with to get where I'm coming from. And we can pray, because sometimes the fear factor increases when you read the Bible and see some of the things that are coming, but everyone around you seems to be like
sheep.
In sheep, meaning like
follow.
Oh, like led astray.
Go along. Yeah.
Yeah. There's good sheep, and then there's sheep just following whatever the narrative is.
Correct.
So, do you think that's helpful?
I do, because this can. So, your answers are great, and it's hard to even answer the question because it can lead people down to, oh yeah, I need to prep, I need to this, I need to that, because there are only things that you as a family feel are right for yourself too during these times.
Yeah.
But the fear driving it is the part that we want to go after.
Right. Because there's, along with the fear that I'm disobeying God if I don't prepare.
Yeah, and that's...
If your decisions are based on a fear of disobeying God, it shows the foundation needs healing in love and what it means to let that love cast out fear, because we're afraid of punishment. And punishment is not for the people of God.
Well, and doesn't prepping in a way too, like, because there is logical, you have some toilet paper and your canned green beans and all that. But there's a fear of God will not provide for me and I won't have enough.
That's it. The fear of poverty, the fear of loss.
It's going after that mindset.
Yes, the scarcity mindset.
That I won't have what I need.
Yes, that's it. That in the time of trouble, won't be supplied. I won't have what I need. So I've got to take control.
Right.
And like I said, you could have one person that maybe they have a pantry with some supplies, not driven by fear. And you have one person who is. It really takes discernment.
It does.
And it's like,
yeah.
What's the mechanism that's at work? And I think you're seeing fear is a big part of your journey. Mm-hmm. So I think it's showing you the discipleship. And that's what God began to show me. Mark, deal with these fears that you have in your life on a day-to-day basis. Invite me into them, day-to-day work through them. Then when I began watching the news or seeing world events, it helped put things more in perspective. And it gave me more of a sense of like, okay, I see, but I don't have to be afraid, because that's always going to take me out of where I need to be best.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want the last one?
Sure. I think it's probably down the same line, isn't it?
I think so. Yep. Why is there so much fear on Jesus' return, and who has the right religion? Also, what to do and what not to do. why does it feel so hard to serve God? Why does it feel like I constantly have to fight making sure I make the right decision?
Because somewhere in your journey, you were taught a perfectionistic, law-based foundation with God. It's pretty much where this comes down to. It's based on you. All religious OCD sufferers, all the pressure's on you, if you'll notice. It's not on, hey, God, you did this for me. It's always, I've got to do something. If you notice, it always goes back to that. I've got to do something to fix this instead of really taking in someone did something for you.
Right.
So it's like, I got to get this right. I got to get this. We're doing a lot of, we're doing some New Testament, Old Testament studies with me and the kids and some of the homeschooling stuff. And they're already learning. Like the Bible is completely filled with like messed up people. Like you can't find one person besides Jesus that didn't royally make rough decisions and big
crazy ones.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like King David would be fired from every church, even though we sing his songs. Right. Paul the Apostle would not make it.
Right.
Quite frankly, Jesus Christ himself would get fired off of most church staffs.
Right.
So,
right.
So anyway, if you get into the reason, it's one of the things the Bible talks about is laying the foundation. And when I began transformational heart ministry work, a lot of my focus has been, we got to relay the foundation. People were looking at the upward structures. What about this? What about this? What about the right? Jesus, I find more people that are obsessed with Jesus's return. They actually just want to get out of here.
Correct.
Because life is rough, understandable, but that's the driving force.
Uh-huh.
B, they want to stick it to all the evil people.
They want to go, see, we are right.
Yep. Oh, judgment's coming.
I feel like that sometimes.
Judgment's coming. You ready?
Right.
You ready? Because judgment's coming. Okay. So they're sick of this world. They want the escape button. B, or C, it's a distraction. So you get your charts out and all these things and pre-millennium, post-millennium. I got it figured out. And here's all these things. I know what's coming and I know what's happening and this. And it becomes like a consuming distraction, right? Instead of the day-to-day, love your neighbor as yourself, show the fruit of the truth that sets you free, loving people, learning to live by the fruit of the Spirit, which is the marker, the Holy Spirit, is at work. Love, joy, peace. You notice none of that is in OCD thinking.
Right.
No love, no joy. No, joy is so far away.
Right, because if your first thought is, when am I getting out of here? You kind of should step back and say,
right.
But listen, it's okay to think that some days.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a day where you're like, Jesus, when you coming?
Right. Right. And
you go, okay, it's one of those days.
And
today.
to give yourself room for the doubts.
Yes.
To give yourself.
God is not threatened by that.
Correct. In fact, God works so beautifully in those very broken, here's the thing. I found my OCD tendencies didn't let me face those broken areas in a way I really need to. I was like, fix it, get it right so I can feel better. And it's like, no, I'm broken. I'm weak. And I'm learning, I'm in a phase of my life, I'm learning to invite God more into the weak places than anything else.
So true.
My flaws, my spin outs, my difficult days, my mood's off, my thoughts are not. I'm inviting him more into that than anywhere else.
Right, because isn't that the best place to be, when you can feel comfortable enough to relate to him, when you feel so imperfect? That's the ultimate place of knowing that he loves you.
That's it.
And that's where he wants you to be.
Yeah. Where the tendency is, let me fix this thing so I feel better.
So I can be
let me learn.
Right.
Let me learn that I am loved right now before I do anything.
Right.
And because it's his love that I need.
Right. So there is no right religion, but there's beautiful relationship that you can have.
Yeah. And a lot of people,
right? Because it's what's the right religion.
Well, a lot of people take that the wrong way.
Well, you know what I mean. I'm saying,
like they're saying, are you saying Islam is there? Are you saying this?
No,
are you saying, are you saying New Age? You know
what I mean.
The right religious practice in following Christ.
Is it Baptist? Is it Pentecostal? Is it
right?
You know?
Yeah. I've had the experience of being able to be a part of or look at or experience many different streams of Christianity. I've come to appreciate a lot of different, because they tend to emphasize something. Mm-hmm. Like we emphasize certain things that become our big emphasis, right?
Right.
And I believe God does that. He works where not everybody has the full monopoly on everything that you need to know. Right. It's like this area, they're really strong in this, but weak in that. And you'll find that with us. And all we can do is be ourselves. And I want to get to the point where, like Paul the Apostle said, he said, I boast in my weaknesses. Right. I'd like to get to that point where I'm like bragging about the weak areas.
Correct.
And he says that's a whole new change for him, because Paul had perfectionistic tendencies. God had to burn out of him. Yeah. And he took years and years and years being actually out of the public light. 8 years here. It was, I forget how many total it is, just out of any public work, just years. We can't comprehend that.
No.
And I think part of that was there were aspects of law that had to get burned out of him. And there's aspects of law that need to be burned out of all of us.
Right.
That don't allow the truth to set us free.
Yeah. That's good, babe.
So anyways, I think we, on an OCD Q&A, we solved everyone's problems.
Let me tell you.
We put this into a nice bow, wrapped it up, and tucked it away. So anyone who is listening to this or watching this, if you're getting a lot out of it, please consider a one-time donation. Please consider sharing this, supporting others. I will add this to our OCD help page. Again, you can go to markdejesus.com/OCD help. If you feel that you have struggles in this, I can't say this enough, you need to go through all of the videos. Even if you think they don't apply to you, you need to go through all of them, even the Q&As. Because in the Q&As, you can find some nuances that can help you in your tool belt, in your armor, to get strengthened, to get encouraged. And we pray that our materials have been a blessing to you in your life and journey. If fear is something that you need some work on, we mentioned that. The book, I Will Not Fear, it's available in many different formats. We mentioned a couple of times mother issues and things like that. We have an online course called Restoring the Power of Nurture. That's a great thing to go through to process some of that. And the latest book that I've been telling a lot of people about is The Heart Healing Journey. Get a copy of that, share it with those that you love. But we pray that our materials, resources have been a blessing to your life and to those you love. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much. We enjoyed this deep dive, and we pray that you did too.
Thank you, everyone.
God bless you.